Most of the time, Star Trek offers us plots that touch us on a moral level or offer us interesting psychological or philosophical plots to ponder and apply to our day to day lives. However, sometimes Star Trek just wants to, and I believe this is the technical term, scare the bejesus out of us. Here are the top 10 scariest moments in Star Trek. I had some ideas for this topic myself, but I also took the opportunity to ask viewers on the YouTube page, on the Twitter account, and on the Facebook page for the channel what their scariest moments in Star Trek are, and you guys really delivered. I got some great ones. So here are the top 10, as chosen mostly by you. A few people cited Empok Nor as a particularly frightening episode of Deep Space Nine, and there are a few frightening moments in it. One in particular was when Chief O'Brien discovers the bodies of his engineers. However, I chose a particular moment from that episode that really frightened me, and this is when Garak first reveals that he has been infected with this agent that causes him to become a sociopathic murderer, and he turns on the engineer, stabbing him. This is a truly frightening scene, not only just because of the sheer, terror of it and imagining yourself in that situation, but because this is Garak. While not exactly the most trustworthy character, he's still someone we've come to know, and to see him betray his comrades like this was truly jarring. Number 9 comes to us from Star Trek Voyager. Star Trek doesn't tend to do body horror all that much, but this first season episode, Faces, does a really good job of it. Specifically when the Vidian scientist reveals that he's swapped faces with one of Voyager's crew members, murdering him in the process. This was kind of a neat little bit of trickery in that both characters were played by the same actor, but the revelation that he's now wearing the face of one of Voyager's crew and B'Elanna's reaction to that is really frightening. Deep, kind of scary moments that sit with you and horrify you like that are the ones that tend to stick with you, but every once in a while, a really good jump scare can accomplish it as well. And that is the subject of this next one from Star Trek The Next Generation's 7th season. The episode is Genesis, specifically the revelation of Barclay having metamorphosed into a sort of arachnid or spider. In this episode, crew members are de-evolving thanks to some weird kind of pseudoscience. And there's generally some fairly scary moments in this episode. One mentioned by a viewer was when Crusher is attacked by Worf when he sprays venom on her. That's definitely a horrifying moment, but for me, the jump scare when Barclay presses up against the glass in engineering will always stick with me. As a kid watching that scene, it really terrified me. Number 7 also comes from Star Trek The Next Generation. This was an episode mentioned by a lot of people, and again, another one with lots of frightening moments. The Season 6 episode Schisms, in which various members of the Enterprise crew are being abducted by aliens into a different dimensional realm and experimented on. For me, the moment that just kind of sits with me and scared me as a kid was when everyone's assembled on the holodeck and they're recounting their experiences and remembering bits and pieces of the abduction, and they slowly kind of piece together exactly what happened, and they have that line, "We've all been in this room before," as the clicks are going on, and the darkened room has the operating table and that sort of thing. So definitely an episode that benefits from the atmosphere created by this horrifying experience these crew members have all shared. Number 6 comes from one of the Star Trek films, and this one was brought up by quite a few people, and I have to agree, this is the transporter accident from Star Trek The Motion Picture. As the Enterprise is beaming 2 crew members aboard, something goes wrong, the transporter begins to scramble their patterns, and as they start to form, they scream these primal screams that are distorted because they're not forming correctly. I think Janice Rand's line, "Oh no, they're forming," will always just kind of stick with me with that scream you hear right after that. And then, of course, the transport isn't successful. They're sent back down, and Kirk signals down and asks Starfleet, "Do you have them?" And that ominous response comes, "What we got back didn't live long, fortunately." Going now into the top 5. So number 5, this is one that definitely frightened me a little bit. I think if I were younger, it would have gotten me even more so. This is the discovery of the bodies on the USS Glenn in the Star Trek Discovery episode, Context is for Kings. We see that the bodies are distorted. They've kind of been twisted and mangled thanks to a spore drive malfunction. And some of the kind of body horror Cronenberg-esque effects used on these bodies were truly horrifying and very unsettling. Definitely frightening, both because of just the visceral horror of it, and also because we're seeing this from Burnham's perspective, and she really has no idea what's going on or what would make this happen. The people around her tend to know more in this situation than she does, and she's very much not being told what's happening. So from that perspective, it's all the more scary because we really don't know what's happened here. Number 4 comes from another film, and a lot of people cited Star Trek First Contact as a good Star Trek horror film, and I would have to agree. There are a lot of elements in that film that make it feel like a horror. And for me, I think I'm going to cite the overall assimilation process of the Enterprise crew members we see on a number of occasions. Right at the beginning, of course, we have Picard's dream where the Borg technology erupts from his face and we get that kind of jump scare. But throughout the movie, we get these images of crew members being assimilated and them on operating tables, getting further converted and that sort of thing. So I have to kind of nominate that overall feeling, the overall assimilation of the Enterprise crew members in First Contact as number 4 on this list. Getting close to number 1 here. So number 3 is another one that a lot of people cited when I was asking what was the scariest moment to them in Star Trek. And this is the SETI eel sequence from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. This, of course, is the larval versions of the SETI eels that are introduced into the brains of Chekhov and Tyrell via the ear. And we get that grotesque close-up of it entering Chekhov's ear and the screams as it burrows into their brains, basically. It's definitely a viscerally terrifying moment, and one that stuck with me ever since I first saw the film many years ago. Number 2 is another moment that was mentioned by a lot of people, and I absolutely have to agree with this one. This is one that, when I watched it as a small child, really terrified me. This is, believe it or not, from the episode Charlie X, when Charlie is stalking around the ship, and his powers are kind of out of control, and he's angry, and there's a number of crew members laughing, and he yells, "Stop laughing!" and stalks off. And this woman crew member comes around the corner, muffled, kind of screaming, and you see that her face is completely covered.
No laughing!
That truly terrified me as a child, and judging by a lot of the comments out there, a lot of you were traumatized by that as well. So yeah, definitely a very scary moment. Well, before we get to number 1, I do want to cite a few honorable mentions mentioned by viewers out there as well. First of all, the zombie Vulcans from the Enterprise episode Impulse. This was one that a few people mentioned as being pretty scary. The Vulcans stalking around the corridor and chasing Archer and his crew as they attempt to repair the ship. Another one that garners honorable mention status is the holodeck scene in the episode Identity Crisis, as Geordi is kind of piecing together what's happened. Again, the atmosphere of this scene really contributes to the creepiness factor. One mentioned by a few people, maybe a little cheesy and corny by today's standards, but definitely scared a few people, was the whole sequence with Dexter Remick at the end of TNG's season 1 episode Conspiracy, specifically Picard and Riker blowing his head off and the queen alien coming out of his chest, and really good effects for the time. Definitely enough to garner a bit of censorship in some parts of the world as well. So some people felt it was too scary for people to watch, and a few people out there seem to agree. And the final honorable mention, the revelation of Picard as Locutus in Star Trek The Next Generation's The Best of Both Worlds Part 1, as he says that your life as it has been is over, and we don't know whether or not Picard will come back as himself in season 4 or not. So this was cited by a few people as a scary moment as well, and definitely earns a place on the honorable mention list. But now for the number 1 pick out there. And this is a bit of a jump scare as well, but a lot of people chose this one. And I actually remember watching this as a kid and being really scared by it as well. This is from the episode Night Terrors, TNG Season 4, when Crusher is alone in the converted cargo bay that's been converted into a morgue, and she's, doing postmortems and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, the corpses around her sit up and terrify her. I remember my heart kind of skipping a few beats watching that as a kid. So definitely a very scary moment, a bit of a jump scare, but also one that really sticks with you. So great number 1 pick. That was all on you guys. You guys picked that as the number 1. That was the most mentioned one in all of the comments that I saw. So definitely a terrifying moment, and really made that episode live up to its title of Night Terrors. So I want to hear from you guys, though. What did you think? Do you agree, disagree with any of those choices? Are there any that you feel it's a crime, should have been on that list, that really terrified you? Please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. I also want to kind of pimp a Twitter account that I have going on. It's just a little side project that I do. It's at Trek_daily, where I share kind of daily doses of Trek, little scenes from Star Trek, moments, just pictures and the dialogue going on in the scene and that kind of thing. And it's just a nice little way to have a little bit of Star Trek in your day, each and every day. So, some of those moments are scary. Mostly they're kind of funny or poignant or that sort of thing. Well, thank you to the Patreon supporters. And of course, it's a new month. There are a few new supporters up there. So thank you all so very much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you everyone else for liking, sharing, and subscribing if you felt this video was worth it. And sound off in the comments what you think of this whole top 5, top 10 video idea. And if you have ideas that you would like to see me do for top 5 or top 10 videos, let me know. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, live long and prosper.